I think we already saw some pretty interesting and good quality matches of the year and some points of the year, even though the weather at Indian Wells isn't the best and it's been raining like almost every day, but I still think it was a great tournament and I can't wait to talk about what's there to come about Indian Wells. Welcome tennis fans to Tennis Traverse Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy Zhang. And in today's episode, I will be talking about the Indian Wells tennis tournament. So before I start, I do want to say that if you guys can hear like a noise in the background, it's my heater because my apartment is freezing and normally I will turn it off, but I don't know, it's just kind of cold. So I'm gonna leave it on. I think you guys won't be able to hear it really clearly though because it's kind of far away. So yeah, please ignore that if you hear it. I know, and you don't have to point it out because yeah, it's just really cold in here. Okay, let's get right into today's episode. So I want to start off talking about the ATP side because I feel like there's less surprises that happened. So yeah. I want to start off with let's start off with the quarterfinals. No, actually, let's start off with the round of 32, and then I'm just going to point out some interesting matches. We'll then talk about the quarterfinals, and then we'll move on to the semifinals and the finals predictions. So for the round of 32, an interesting match that took place was the match between Arthur Fils and Lorenzo Musetti. So why this match was really interesting is because I think the second set was one of the highest quality sets yet. I think Fils played amazing and I feel like both of them didn't have this start of the year that they would like to have. I feel like while Musetti is injured and Fils probably wanted to go further, but sometimes I think it's just a combination of him not having enough experiences and his mental block that causes him to lose a lot of matches pretty early on. But I think the second set was really high quality. I will also leave a link for all of the highlights for you guys to check it out. So yeah. Another match I want to mention is the match between Dimitrov and Monfils. I think I talked about this last episode about how Monfils is having one of his best years on tour yet, and I think it really showed. I think this match was also another match with really high quality, with Dimitrov ultimately coming out on top, but in the round of 16th he lost. However, this was just really high quality. I then want to talk about the round of 16 matches. So I want to mention a match between Holger Rune and Stefanos Tsitsipas. So I want to talk about the Holger Rune match and Stefanos Tsitsipas match because Steph has never beaten Holger, and I think he has like a 0-5 record against him. And I'm not taking anything away from Holger, but I think Tsitsipas is in great form, and for Holger to beat Tsitsipas in such a dominating fashion is pretty impressive. However, I just don't see myself rooting for him because I just feel like he's still such like a young player, but obviously he matured and I think his performance is not consistent enough. I feel like there are some times where he would just have an extreme outburst and that would just result in a loss that nobody expected. And I feel like his start of the year isn't that great, and this is definitely one of his best results of the year yet. So yeah, and then I want to talk about the match between Jack Draper and Taylor Fritz. I think Jack Draper is playing the best he's ever played. I think that this is the style of tennis he really wants to play. He completely dominated Taylor Fritz in 2 straight sets, especially. I just feel like he is a player who is like used to get really, I don't know, he likes to get himself into trouble of just running to the corners and getting the ball, but because of how tall and how strong his physique is, it sometimes will result in injury. And however, I feel like his goal of his style of play is to just hit strong balls, hit winners, but sometimes he's just not that kind of player. But I think in this tournament, he really combined his, like, both of those playing styles, like chasing down balls and also hitting like winners when he's supposed to. And I think he's really playing the best. And for him to beat Taylor Fritz, who was a former champion here, is quite a big deal because everyone in the crowd is rooting for Taylor Fritz. But I really do think Jack Draper had great improvements, and I think it's really wise for him to sit out of like the Davis Cup, because I just think he's at peak performance right now, and one of the reasons for that is he took his time to rest, and that I think truly helped him in the end. So yeah, and now we'll talk about the quarterfinals. So the 4 quarterfinals we had was Cerundolo versus Carlos Alcaraz, Ben Shelton versus Jack Draper, Arthur Fils versus Daniil Medvedev, and Tallon Griekspoor versus Holger Rune. So let's start with Cerundolo versus Alcaraz. I thought that this was just a regular routine match for Alcaraz. I think Alcaraz really enjoyed the Indian Wells conditions, and I mean, just sorry to Cerundolo, but like when Alcaraz is on, especially at Indian Wells, he's playing fantastic, and I think that's just what happened. I think Cerundolo simply got outplayed, but if you look at the score, you could tell that it wasn't as one-sided as I would have expected. However, I feel like we shouldn't like read that much into it. I still think Carlos is the favorite to win this tournament, just because he has won like 3 titles here in a row, and I really do think despite the court changing, it's still like the conditions still suit him, and he feels just at home here. And he said that it's one of his best, like he likes the venue a lot, and it's one of the best courts that he likes to play on. So yeah, I think there's not that much to say here. I think he's just really comfortable, and I think when he's comfortable, he's capable of winning matches and getting the title. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about the next quarterfinal between Ben Shelton and Jack Draper. This was also an incredible quarterfinal because I think both players had their breakthrough tournament of the year. I feel like Ben Shelton also hasn't been making a lot of noises, not because of injury, but just because he just haven't been his best self. And I feel like, especially in this match, I feel like sometimes when he lost his first serve, it's sometimes his second serve is a little bit vulnerable, but I feel like because the court is so slow and has such a big bounce to it, his kick serve is really a weapon. But when Jack Draper, obviously who's playing at his best, can get used to the kick serve, he has no problem of just returning the kick serve into the court and rallying. And when they're rallying, I think Jack Draper will normally just take the initiative and change his directions and win the point. And I feel like Ben Shelton was a little bit on the defensive side if he doesn't have a first serve, and I think that just shows how important his first serve is to him, because it's such a big weapon and he can really just use it when, if he has it, he can use it, he can trust it to bail him out of trouble. But I feel like in this match, he didn't really have his first serve, and yeah, I think that's the reason why he lost. The next quarterfinal I want to talk about is Arthur Fils versus Daniil Medvedev. I mean, I think this match was really entertaining because both of these players have, well, I feel like Arthur Fils has a lot of passion for tennis and Medvedev just have a lot of pent-up anger. But it was just a really passionate match, and I've truly never seen Medvedev looking this happy, like after he beat someone. Like he like literally jumped up and down after he beat Fils, and I mean, I think he really needs a win. I think this season hasn't been what he's looking for, and this match I think was really frustrating for Arthur Fils because in the final set, they played a deciding tiebreak to 7 points, and Medvedev came out on top with a score of 9-7. And that entire thing was just really funny to me because Fils had a simple volley put away, but he just completely shanked it. I mean, Medvedev did hit it to his body, but I feel like it was just like an easy put away shot. However, Fils, I don't know, something happened and he just completely shanked it. And as a result, he like threw his racket and everything. And I mean, I think losses like these are definitely really frustrating for a player, especially because you're fighting so hard. And I would admit, I think Medvedev is a little bit lucky for winning like this because like it was just a simple put away shot that was missed by Arthur Fils. However, I think Medvedev really needs to win, and I think he just have trouble now hitting winners. Like, he can't hit a winner, and before his strategy is to run the balls down and just suddenly take initiative and just hit an amazing shot. But I feel like he's having trouble hitting that like point ending shot, if that makes any sense. I feel like he's having trouble ending the point, which is resulting in him losing matches. And I think everyone now, when they play against Medvedev, even if they're ranked like relatively lower than Medvedev, they have a mentality going in that they can beat Medvedev. And I think that's how a lot of losses has been from Medvedev this season. But I really do think this win will help him gain a little bit of confidence going in. So the next quarterfinal I want to talk about is Tallon Griekspoor versus Holger Rune. So this was really interesting because Griekspoor won the first set, and I think he's a really interesting player because unlike Bencic Van de Zenskolp, who will have these amazing like performances against top players, and then he won't be able to like back up his win because when he plays against a player that's lower ranked than him, a lot of people expect him to win, and I think that pressure gets to him. But for Griekspoor, after beating Zverev, I feel like he's easily backed up his win because he made it to the quarterfinals. But I think Holger Rune was just a little bit off for the first set, and he quickly came back and beat Griekspoor. So now we'll predict the semifinals and the finals. I know that this episode will be released on Monday, and by that time you guys will know both the semifinals and finals results. So if you guys want to skip out on this part, you guys can. And if you guys go to the timestamps, I think in the show notes, if you guys click on the women's like prediction, you guys will be able to go to the WTA prediction. So feel free to skip this part, or if you want to see if I'm right or not, please continue listening. So between Holger Rune and Daniil Medvedev, I think Medvedev have a chance of winning. I think Medvedev gained a lot of confidence, but like skill-wise, or not skill-wise, or just like performance-wise and how they performed this entire tournament, I do think Holger Rune have a little bit of an advantage because I think he looked more convincing throughout this tournament. And Medvedev, I don't know, I feel like that win against Arthur Fils was just a little bit really just lucky, and I don't know if he have the ability to beat Holger Rune, who's I think playing pretty well. But still, I really do hope Medvedev can come out on top because I think he really needs the points, and a trip to the Indian Wells finals will definitely be a huge confidence boost for him. And for the next semifinal between Jack Draper and Carlos Alcaraz, I think it's a must-watch. I think it will be incredible. The last time we got the matchup between Carlos Alcaraz and Jack Draper wasn't great because I think clearly Jack Draper was compromised, but I feel like he's in his peak performance shape right now. Obviously, I still think Carlos is obviously the favorite here, but I'm just looking forward to a fun match because I think Jack Draper have an ability to drag this match out and make Carlos fight for the win. So I'm really looking forward to this matchup. Okay, and for the finals, I think still obviously Carlos is going to win, and like even if Carlos played against Holger Rune or Medvedev, I still think he's going to come out on top. And the same with Draper. I think the winner between Jack Draper and Carlos Alcaraz will be the Indian Wells champion. I think the other side, Holger Rune and Medvedev, really doesn't have the weapon or the answer for Jack Draper and Carlos. For Carlos, obviously, just because of how great of a player he is, and Jack Draper is in top form, and I don't think Medvedev and Holger Rune can match up to that, because I think Jack Draper beat players like Taylor Fritz pretty convincingly, and I think that's something Medvedev and Holger Rune maybe wouldn't even be able to do. So I think Jack Draper will come out on top if he goes to the finals, and Carlos obviously. So yeah, okay, that's all for the men's prediction and just some inputs. I'll come back, we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and talk about the women's and some pretty interesting matches that took place. Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. We'll now talk about the women's, which I think there's just more actions. I think it was more exciting because there has been a lot of interesting matches that went on. So we'll do the same thing. We'll talk about round of 32, round of 16, talk about the quarterfinals, talk about the semifinals because it happened yesterday, a day before the men's semifinals, and then we'll predict the finals. So for the round of 32, I want to mention the match between Clara Tauson and Mirra Andreeva, because I think this was a replay of a match that took place in Dubai, which is a 1,000 tournament before this, and Andreeva completely just out-hit Tauson, which is something you don't really expect because Andreeva doesn't have like the power, if that makes any sense. Like Andreeva is the type of player who absorbs the power and hit the balls to the corners, trying to make their opponent run. And Clara Tauson is sort of completely the opposite, who just is pure ball striking and trying to hit balls to the corner, sort of like Madison Keys. But I think this rematch really showed that Andreeva improved a lot. I think in Australia, her performance wasn't that convincing. She had a lot of really tight matches, and I think she mentioned that she's trying to figure out what her power is and trying to just hit the ball and just trying to make some minor adjustment to how she plays tennis. And I think that really is like effective because although her Australia run isn't perfect and I think isn't where she wanted to because she lost to Sabalenka pretty easily, but I still think she really improved a lot if you compare her form in Australia to now. I think she's definitely the most improved. Other round of 32 matches I want to mention is Belinda Bencic beating Diana Shnaider. So this was really interesting because I truly root for Belinda Bencic. I think she just came back, I think, like 5 months or a few months after maternity leave. And she's playing such good tennis. I think, as I said before, a lot of people just didn't expect her. Well, like, we just expect her that she's back now. And she's doing somewhat even better than how she was doing before her maternity leave. And I just think for her to beat Shnaider, who obviously I think didn't have the greatest start, didn't have the greatest year yet, is still a pretty remarkable achievement just because of how young Shnaider is. And she's been having, like, Shnaider has been getting consistent practices and playing matches. And obviously Belinda definitely played more just because of just like she's older than her, but to come back from maternity leave, even if you practice with other players, it's so different. Just the whole environment of, as I said, I think in previous episodes, of even if you're playing against like a ranked player in practice at like the grounds is so different than like an actual match because there's more to it. You're playing for more. And I think Bencic is just back, and I really want her to get like more titles, or just maybe even have a deep run at a Grand Slam. For the round of 16th, I don't think there's much to talk about. I mean, Bencic did beat Goff, but from the way I hyped it up, you guys could hear how excited I was about that. Oh, I do. Okay, never mind. I do want to talk about Actually, I want to talk about a lot of matches. Okay, so let's talk about Mirra Andreeva beating Rybakina with a score of 6-1, 6-2. Yes, you heard that right. 6-1 and 6-2. That's actually insane to me. I mean, obviously, Rybakina has been dealing with a lot of issues beside tennis, but I mean, we didn't expect this score to come out because Rybakina, even though she's been dealing with a lot, she's still one of the top performers and she's going deep in a lot of tournaments. So this was just completely unexpected. I mean, if you watch the highlights, you could see that Rybakina was making a lot of errors, but still, this scoreline is just completely unexpected for me. And I'll leave a highlight for you guys so you guys can judge it yourself, but it was pretty interesting how this match turned out, and I think that just proved to us once again that Andreeva is just simply too good, and she's able to just find her opponent's weaknesses, and when her opponent have a bad day, she's able to feed off of that and just get her win, which she totally deserves. I feel like for a lot of opponents, if the person you're playing against is having a bad day, maybe it'll play down to her level, but Andreeva clearly didn't because she played amazing. Okay, now we'll move on to talk about another matchup, which is Svitolina versus Pegula. I just think this was absolutely incredible coming from Svitolina because she lost the first set and just came back and beat Pegula with a score of 6-1, 6-2. I'll leave a highlight for this as well. Another round of 16th match I want to talk about is Muchova versus Swiatek. Coming in, I thought this would be an interesting match because I think just Muchova, every time, I just love her style of tennis. I think she's my favorite tennis player beside Iga. I mean, Andreeva is getting closer to that spot too. I think Andreeva is completely incredible, but I really expected this to be a close match. But Iga just completely destroyed Muchova with a score of 6-1, 6-1. And it was really unexpected for me. But yeah, it was so interesting how Iga played so well, and I think after watching this match, I thought she was going to beat the champion of Indian Wells for sure. So it turned out that she lost to Andreeva in the semifinals, which I will talk about later on. But overall, I mean, I thought it was going to be a great match, but it turned out it was just really one-sided. And the last match I want to mention in the round of 16th is Keys versus Bencic. So Keys was down like 3-5 in the second set tiebreak, but managed to come back up and win with the score of 9-7 in the second set. And I just love Madison Keys. I think she really deserves everything, and I love that after Australian Open, after winning the title, she didn't just come back immediately to tennis. She took her time off. She celebrated her win with her family. She didn't play the Middle East, even though I know she had an injury issue. But I think just immediately coming back from Australian Open at Indian Wells, she's still playing really great, and she doesn't have any motivation issues. She wants the title, and I just think her performance like this will just carry on to the entire year. And obviously, I don't know how she will perform on clay or grass, which is coming up, but I think if she doesn't get a major injury, she is definitely a must-watch at US Open this year. I really do think she have a chance of getting another title because she often performs well at US Open. Okay, now I want to talk about the quarterfinal matches. The first one is Sabalenka versus Samsonova. Not that much to say, to be completely honest. I think Sabalenka was down 0-2 and then she came back and completely dominated. I just think prior to her beating Madison Keys in the semifinal, I didn't really view her as someone who's in their top form because her her like performance in the Middle East was just really unexpected. I thought she was gonna perform better, and it was just a little bit underwhelming. And I think she really do have to question if it is the right choice to immediately play after a devastating loss like the one that happened in Australia, because even though Madison Keys deserved to celebrate her winning Australian Open, I do think that Sabalenka really needed to recover from losing the chance of winning 3 Australian Opens in a row. But yeah, okay, now I want to talk about Bencic versus Keys. I think this is a match where Bencic was off and Keys was playing great, because Keys beat Bencic with a score of 6-1, 6-1, and I feel like that's a common theme among the women. They like their performance fluctuates a lot, and I think that really have to do with the weather there as well, because the weather at Indian Wells have been just really different. It has been really sunny, has been really gloomy, has been really windy, and I think just different conditions with the new changes to the court really require players to just adjust, and if they can't adjust to the like unpredictable weather, then it will result in a loss like this, and I think that's what happened here. Okay, now I want to talk about Andreeva versus Svitolina. Just again, another dominant performance from Andreeva. For the next quarterfinal, Swiatek versus Qinwen. This was the first time they played against each other after Iga lost to Qinwen at the Olympics, and I think this match really meant a lot to her. I feel like that's also a common theme as well, with just a lot of meaningful matches that took place, such as the semifinal match between Sabalenka and Keys. I feel like there were like a lot of revenges going on, and I mean, Iga played amazing. She completely dominated Qinwen with a score of 6-3 and 6-3, and I just feel like that loss at the Olympics really took a lot away from Iga, because she's never won a title. Like, the last title she won was Roland Garros last year, and that's a title I think she really, like, a lot people expected her to win. Like, people still expect her to win Roland Garros this year. Like, how people expected Sabalenka to win Australian Open this year. It's just a common thing. And yeah, I just feel like she did successfully revenge her loss, and I feel like maybe it could overcome her mental block, because she hasn't had a title, and I think that really some of it have to do with her Olympic loss. Okay, now I want to talk about the semifinals. So Sabalenka versus Keys. This was one-sided, extremely one-sided. Keys just was not on. Sabalenka, I think Keys was trying to hit a lot of the shots like how she used to hit. She's a risk taker. When she's in a defensive position, she's able to rip a ridiculous winner, and you just have to stand there and be like, okay, well, that's her. And Keys was trying to do that, but she just couldn't hit the ball inside the court. And even though Sabalenka is often the players that does what Keys does, which is to hit like winners, Sabalenka simply just received the gifts that Keys gave her, because Keys couldn't keep balls in play. And I mean, I just think a loss like this obviously ended Keys's 15 match winning streak, but we still have Miami, and I feel like with her mindset, this loss isn't going to affect her tremendously. And I just think she's a really wonderful player, and we're definitely going to see more of her in Miami. And for the other semifinal, Andreeva versus Swiatek, I think this match was good. It was entertaining, but I just feel like both players played well in the first set. In the second set, Andreeva just dipped off a little bit, and she lost that second set so quickly. And the third set, Iga just had trouble putting balls in play, and Andreeva had an early break at the start, and that basically dictated the match. there were some incredible rallies. I watched it with my mom, and my mom really enjoyed watching Andreeva because Andreeva is actually just a day younger than me, which is really insane thinking about it because she's already beating Iga Swiatek, and I'm just here recording a podcast in my room. But yeah, I think Andreeva played amazing. However, I really do think she's going to have trouble against Sabalenka because she always have trouble against Sabalenka. However, I think she have a better chance because she's in great form, whereas Sabalenka, I'm not so sure, because I feel like despite beating Keys, it was just like Keys didn't perform at her best at all. So I'm not really sure, but I think Andreeva is now able to, like, at the Australian Open she wasn't, but now she's able to just keep up with the power of a player. Like, she beat Rybakina, who's incredible ball striker. She's incredible. She's beating Clara Tauson, who's also another incredible ball striker. So I think she really have a chance, but I just don't know how much the mental is going to play into it because I think she have a mental block when she's playing against Sabalenka. However, I really do look forward to this match, and yeah, I can't wait to see it, which is on Sunday. I still favor Sabalenka to win, but I think it'll be a close one. So yeah, I think that's all. This one's a long episode. I will try to leave a link to all of the matches I mentioned. I know there was a lot. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys haven't subscribed to my YouTube, you should. If you guys haven't followed all of my social medias, you should as well. It's at Tennis Trivers. That is at Tennis Trivers on Instagram and Twitter, or X. If you're listening on YouTube, as I said before, comment, like, and subscribe. If you are listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And I'll see you guys next Sunday where we talk about the Miami Open. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.